Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title.
Hey, Darnell.
Mitch, I know we're trying to figure out a working title, but we cannot name the podcast. The Business of Theater. You can make more with a flop than a hit.
You know why? Because someone already wrote the musical. And we don't want to
Someone already
sued.
wrote the musical. Yes,
that's right.
You can't. But we're bringing that up for many reasons that we will get into. Welcome to The Business of Theater, a working title. I am Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And let's get down to business. So the point of that working title is there's a lot going on Broadway right now. Like, for one, as you heard before our intro really kicked in, when I'm here in Philadelphia, we were voted Best Local Theater Company by Philly Metro. And the reason that is exciting news is because a part of our season, our 2022-23 season, features a world premiere by Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright James Irons. And the play is called Abandon. And it'll be in the spring.
At the same time as his Pulitzer Prize winner, Fat Ham, moves to Broadway.
Absolutely. I don't know the exact dates. I gotta look.
it's somewhere. Yeah, well, it's not this month, so it's coming up.
Yeah,
but
I know
it's very exciting, yes. And the timing, of course, these things can almost never be done on purpose. It just so happens that his hit play from the Public Theater that won the Pulitzer is being moved to Broadway. And at the same time, you already had Abandon, his new play, scheduled to come into your season. So hopefully people will run out. Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I've already bought a ticket. I'm going to Philly. I'm in New York. It's a short hop. And so I'm going to go see it. And to just compliment Theater Exile, I know it's not supposed to be a promotion. I own nothing of Theater Exile, but I saw Wolf play there, which was their last play, and it was phenomenal. It was top quality. I mean, better than a lot of things I've seen in a long time. So the cast was amazing, direction, everything. But we should move on because we're talking about theater everywhere, right?
I know we are. But just to be clear, both Fat Ham will be on Broadway in March.
I think we got the message.
And Abandon, which is by James Irons, world premiere by Theater Exile, will be in April.
Okay. We got it.
Yeah, check the show notes.
Moving on.
I know, there's so much to talk about. We have to get it all in. Okay.
There is.
So now that...
Overall topics, there are all sorts of... The problem with critics is rearing its ugly head. A show is closing after only 2 weeks of running. We have actors opening their mouth in protest about things. We've got phenomenal new plays and musicals opening to the point that there isn't enough audience. And we have lots of things to talk about. And basically, I'd like to start with, if you don't mind, sir, why shows close. And why some shows are going to, even if they're not doing great, are going to last 3 months, 6 months. And other shows like K-Pop, which is a new musical on Broadway, which came from a rave review off Broadway. Why, after only 2 weeks on Broadway, it's announced its closing notice.
Yeah.
It's very tricky.
Well, when it comes to Broadway, if you don't get that glowing review from the New York Times, you can't hold out for a Tony.
and that's part of it. It's the bottom line. Let's be clear: if the audience isn't buying tickets, and if you don't have enough cash in the bank as a reserve you have to close. And, producers, everybody has, their heart in the show that they are producing. There are many shows that producers have taken money out of their own personal bank account in the numbers of hundreds of thousands of dollars because they said, I'm going to turn this show around. I think it's still a hit, and we're going to overcome the critics, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And some of their shows were pretty damn good. The bottom line is the audience wasn't going. And it's very hard. I think it's sort of like accepting the fact that your business failed, because each show is its own business, certainly on Broadway. Yeah. And it's very hard to admit that. And you have investors, and you're going to have to tell them that they lost all their money. The problem is even the shows that drag on for 6 months but are only working with half an audience, their investors lose all their money too. But the people had some more employment. That's part of the thinking, let's drag it on. Sometimes it's better to just, as I say, cut the umbilical cord and move on, right? Start the new life.
Let me ask you this, though. If we can go back to the New York Times review of K-pop, it does state that the 2017 version of the production, that they did enjoy that one over, the adjustments that were made for Broadway. Is that enough to say that maybe this production team might go back and retool this piece?
Probably not for Broadway, but yes. And it may have a life touring. It also may have a life in other countries. That's how revivals happen sometimes. All of a sudden, something happens in London or at Alabama Shakespeare Company, they do, or Guthrie Theater. Some new director gets their hand on the show, and all of a sudden it clicks, and something. And by the way, it does matter what theater, what physical venue you are in. I'm going to try to make this story short. I did a tour of State Fair, the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, and we noticed on the road that if we were in a house, a theater that the audience was lower than the stage and the stage was flat, that the critics and the audience did not like it as much as when they were in what's called a raked audience, where the seats rise up so that they are higher than the stage and they're looking down on it. And that was because the staging was so deep. There were so many things happening upstage behind the first people on stage, the front people. And there was a lot more choreography, and it was very exciting. So we turned to the people who were going to take it to Broadway, and we said, we're giving you a clue here. We've noticed this. And the first thing they did was rent a theater that had a flat stage and the audience was below the stage. And of course, I'm not blaming everything on it, but it does make a difference. And the critics called the show rather flat. And I don't think it would have gotten the same notices if it had been in a different theater. That's just a thought. Yeah. I also want to go back and apologize for a faux pas line I just said about an umbilical cord. That has nothing to do with anything. I just meant, it's like I apologize. Wrong image. Rude. I had no intent. That just spilled out of my mouth.
Can't take Mitch anywhere. No, this is why we're a podcast and not a YouTube channel.
You just take both feet out of your ears. Anyway, I apologize. And, the idea is you move on. That's all the message was.
We're off the cuff here, but we can, we make edits in real time. So that's what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, but you were talking, but the critics also, you said New York Times, what a powerhouse. And to this day, we're still trying to figure out why. Why whoever they hire, have such clout over what the audience goes to see. And people, there's no arts and leisure section that, as in the old days, that used to be the Bible of theater goers. It's not the same now. So why does this one critic have that kind of power over what we go see? When it's I don't have an answer for it, but we all know it and we resent it. And sometimes these critics come with their prejudices and their personal. Of course, every critic has their own personal taste, right? So there's a great story about Clive Barnes. I think it was his last review for the New York Times. Rex Harrison knew that Clive Barnes was not a giant fan of plays and that he'd often come with a drink or two in his system and would fall asleep during it. And he kind of refused to be critiqued by the man. So he bought up all the seats around where the critic was going to be sitting, where Clive Barnes was. And what happened is somewhere during Act One, his friends sitting all around him noticed the man had fallen asleep, and he, I gather, had a lot of liquor on his breath. And that was then reported to the New York Times, and the New York Times fired him because he had pre-written an entire review of the show with a couple of names from the program left out that his assistants would fill in later. And he had already said, I didn't like Act Two. He didn't even see Act Two. Mm. So, unfortunately, a few weeks later, he was hired by the New York Post as their primary critic. So, it's like the perspective of who these people are. There's some magnificent writers and some people who absolutely adore theater. But when you have to see 20 or 30 shows in a month, as often happens in April and May each year, just before the Tonys, I guess you can get pretty, numb, perhaps is the right word. Yeah. But the New York Times, Clive Barnes did not have the same clout working for the New York Post. That's the interesting part of the story. So K-pop, perhaps you want to, I'll throw it over to you, what K-pop what they're claiming the New York Times critic, Jesse Green, how he did his review, what the problem with the review was. Mm-hmm.
Well, there are, you'll have to get behind the paywall to read it.
Yeah.
It's some of the words he used to describe the experience sound a bit racist or offensive. And so a lot of people were responding to that. And it's funny, like you had to read it a few times and then say, I could see, I don't know that it went past editors with that thought in mind as well.
But isn't that what's interesting? There are editors.
Yes.
And if nothing, even if we give, and Jesse Green, he's a nice person, if you've ever met him and stuff, it's insensitive.
He's a very nice prince.
Yeah. Let's see. But he just threw the tar on the steps, didn't he?
Threw pitch on the stairs.
Pitch on the stairs.
To catch K-pop
but if nothing else, it was insensitive.
Yeah.
Just, and this is my problem with critics in general. The analysis doesn't help me know whether or not it's worth me buying a ticket to experience the show.
Yeah.
And that, to me, this is not a literary test on their part. They don't have to prove to me that they got a PhD in writing. I just want to know, and they do have a knowledge of history of theater. I want to know how this plays into our society, our culture, whether there's enjoyment factor, who might like it, who might not. Any of that helps me.
I think I think also some of the criticism was saying that the review is kind of saying that these cultural differences have no place on Broadway,
Yeah,
and
it did say that.
Yeah, and that's kind of sad too. It is like, because honestly, you know, there was a time where I would pull away from a film that had subtitles because I just didn't have, the subtitles tend to move faster than I can process them. So I'm like skipping words and I'm not really processing. But sometimes you can just sort of observe and see the direction, the body language, and everything, kind of make out what's going on in there. And so there are moments of K-pop that are not in English, and that was brought up, and it's like, well, it's K-pop.
Well, my argument is I have seen plenty of shows where just because the sound wasn't great and the actors weren't enunciating, I didn't know what they were saying anyway.
Yeah.
And I still got through the play and I enjoyed it or didn't.
And sometimes that's the reason why you should come see it more than once. Sometimes you miss something, or sometimes something really stood out and you were like, that moment like resonated with me and I want to go back and process the rest. I'm speaking to anybody who's loved anything that's been on Broadway and seen it dozens of times. I'm thinking about the people who when we think about films, like people who saw Black Panther like a million times, it was like, it's because they just needed to be immersed in it and process everything on different levels now that they've gotten this foundation in place. And, this is when I think the price of Broadway tickets doesn't allow for you to do that. There's so much going on in 2 hours and 20 minutes that you can't really process it all in one sitting.
And quite honestly, more so with opera, but sticking to theater, the price of theater is really the reason some people think of it as elitist.
Mm-hmm.
It's only, even though you can buy a $20 ticket or a $30 ticket to many shows, who the hell wants to sit in the last row and not be sure they can see everything?
Yeah.
My argument, I just helped a friend buy concert tickets at Madison Square Garden for Billy Joel. The best price they could get was $230 per seat. And I'm thinking, I have his albums. I watch the concerts on television. And it's not that I don't think he's a spectacular performer, but there is a limit as to what I think I can afford.
Yeah.
And I would like to believe that I could not have to sit in the rafters at the price that I can afford in order to see Billy Joel. It would be nice.
I steal only when I can afford. That's everything.
Well, that's Les Mis, an entire 3-hour musical because someone stole a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that was from Aladdin, but yes.
Yeah, no.
Yes, obviously.
Well, the age difference in references.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I know it's not like I'm an odd bird, I'm somebody who I really enjoyed this. I need to see it a couple more times. I need to bring a friend. I would love it if they said, "Thank you for coming to the show. Here's a discount code to come see it again." Because I'm not the one you're trying to get in there for the first time.
Right.
I've been there already. So it's likely that I will bring somebody else if I had a discount. I don't know.
But even the discounts, the problem for me as an older American is I am spoiled, having worked in the theater, that when friends, managers shared available seats, never something that lost the show money, but if there's an empty seat, we let each other in to see the show. The seats were pretty good. I could see the expressions on the actors' faces. To get the discount and then be told I'm going to be sitting in a very uncomfortable chair upstairs towards the back, I think I'll wait until the show is starting to die down and the prices come down. Yeah. If that happens. That's me. Again, somebody, we're people in the industry. tourists and my family members can't afford it. They have to find the money.
Yeah.
They can't afford to do that.
I think it's also because we are in the industry, but I feel like if there's no soundtrack, if the soundtrack's not available,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I want to come see it again because
the live experience there's no question. I mean, that's what brings us back and back. You know, luckily for me, there's so many new shows opening on Broadway. I don't have time to go back. I'm just trying to keep up with the new ones. We should bring up, though, while we were talking about critics, that the same problem happened with the off-Broadway show, which was a phenomenal revival of Raisin in the Sun. That was at the Public Theater. Tanya Pinkins, who played the leading female role in Raisin in the Sun, she wrote a letter to the New York Times. She was pissed, and rightfully so, because, which I did not know, but I learned from some actor friends in the show, there are 3 different versions of Raisin in the Sun, all written by Lorraine Hansberry. And what has happened, because once they made the movie with Sidney Poitier, the show became male-dominated. It was about him. She originally wrote the show to be about the women in the house. And that is the original version, which they produced at the Public Theater. So the male lead, while he was phenomenal, it was about the 3 women in the house, primarily. We watched them, and it was eye-opening to me. There was a whole new angle to this show. I felt like I was seeing something brand new, even though I'd seen many a version of this. And the New York Times did not get that. They're saying, well, wait a minute. The male didn't stand out. And that's all. And it's like Tanya Pinkins went, it wasn't supposed to. What's your problem, New York Times? You know, can't you see past that? Can't you just experience what you're seeing in front of you? Did it work? Did it have an effect on you? You know, that kind of thing. So, you know, of course, this is the life. It's what critics get. They get criticized as well. Yeah. It's just, unfortunately, New York Times is so powerful. And perhaps because of the New York Times review, Raisin in the Sun, which in my opinion should have moved to Broadway, did not, or is not.
Well, that review was also Jesse Green.
Yes. Yeah. And Jesse. By the way, the New York Times does have other critics, and they have critics of color. So the fact that they sent Jesse, who is the primary, they have him ranked.
I just want to know what happens once they get this feedback. Like, what kind of meeting comes up after that? Or are they just saying, you know what, they're buzzing?
I think that's it.
That's all that matters.
I really believe that the idea is selling newspapers. That's all this is about. We were always told, having worked in press offices and marketing rooms, that that when we sent out a press release, we had to write it in a way that if we're one, in those days it was fax machines, of course, that if they're getting 70 press releases in a day and they have room for one a week, that you have got to write it that they go, this is relevant and this is the most important thing that will sell our newspaper. And that's how they made the choice which one to follow. It's a business. That doesn't mean, because it's not news per se, it's a review, right? Yeah. So it's, are we going to sell ad space? Are people going to actually read this review? It's a shame, but it's the way America works on some level, Anyway, and by the way, one of the glorious things that happened in the past 10, 15 years is bloggers. That you can find out what other real people thought about the show that they saw without having to go through a paid critic.
Well, this is what I was wondering about K-pop. What was everybody else saying? And why not flood the space with what everybody else was saying?
Well, this is a conjecture, as most of this is. I have no firsthand knowledge, but from past experiences, there are a number of ways that shows are produced. There are shows that raise more money than they need in order to have the extra money to bombard the media afterward, and it takes a number of weeks to sell tickets after their views come out.
Yeah.
Unless you had such an advanced word of mouth that this is the show oh my God, Hamilton at the Public Theater, it's going to Broadway, you have to buy tickets. Unless it's something like that. And K-pop had a great reputation, but they didn't do a lot of promotion before it actually opened on Broadway. So they were doing the kind of producing which is, we're going to spend as little as we can, get to opening night, and the reviews are going to tell us whether we run or we don't. And that is a style of producing. Many shows operate that way.
Yeah.
And my guess is that's what happened. They did not have the reserve.
Speaking of Hamilton, do you think that when Fat Ham hits Broadway that some tourists are going to refer to it as Fat Hamilton?
I think you just started something, and no.
Hashtag Fat Hamilton. It's cute because on their website it says, join the Hamily.
Ah, nice.
Join the Hamily. All right.
Well, by the way, again, a great, another old-time story, the David Merrick, the old-time con artist, Broadway producer who did Hello Dolly. He had many, many, many hits. But he once had I'll call it a flop, at the Booth Theater, which was in the right next door to a Chorus Lines theater. And he put an ad in the New York Times that said, the best show next to a chorus line. And it took 2 weeks of running the ad before the Times took it down. But that's how he tried to sell a show that wasn't a hit. That's creative. It's a con job, but it's creative. You got to give the man some credit.
Yeah.
So if they do Fat Hamilton, go for it. You do it as long as you can, get yourself some notoriety.
We're going to see Fat Hamilton. It's going to be amazing. It's not at the public anymore.
And by the way, there are some people who will think they're seeing Hamilton. There are people who show up at the wrong theater every night. They just walk in and say, you mean this isn't where Chicago is playing? No, did you look at your ticket? It says it's on a different street and in a different theater. What are you doing here?
No.
Oh my God, it starts in 5 minutes. How do we get there? It happens every night. Mm-hmm. So why not?
Fat Ham will be at the American Airlines Theater, not the Richard Rogers. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. It's crazy. So there's a lot of news about, let's see, The Wiz.
Yay,
the Wizard of Oz in general, that world.
And the movie, and the double movie based on Wicked.
Yeah, I mean, so The Wiz is coming to Broadway at some point.
We think.
Which is...
Very often they advertise this before they know.
It's like a tease to just figure out returns to Broadway following a
also
new
to make sure
tour.
that... Right, but it's also now we're raising money for it, and we're going to announce it so people think it's happening, and then we'll pray we make the rest of the money.
Yes, and the cast is building for Wicked, the film, which I don't know.
New Yorkers in there.
Yeah, does it? It has a release date. It's next Christmas. Mm-hmm. Next Christmas. No, it's not a thing. Don't worry about it. But. That's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting cast. Jeff Goldblum rumored to be the wizard. We'll see. Michelle Yeoh is Madame Morrible. Jonathan Bailey is Fiyero.
Not only that, it's a two-parter.
Yeah.
That's what's fascinating is that they're going to. I guess Harry Potter, if you can do 8 parts or not, maybe you can do 2 parts for Wicked. It's going to be an interesting experiment.
Well, I mean, if the book is huge.
Yes. There's no
So
question.
I think it is justified. I mean, they could easily. I don't know. I don't know how far, the first film will go. Like the first film could get us, to meeting, to when Elphaba meets Galinda.
Yeah,
Because
it's hard to
there's so
know.
much
Yeah.
story there if they're going to really lean on the book, lean on the novel. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Lord knows I'm intrigued.
I am too.
Um,
Yeah.
it's always scary when you have to uh, cast and well, think about the risk of Harry Potter.
Hmm.
You get that whole cast together, you pay all these directors, you do multiple movies at the same time. What if the first one was a flop?
Yeah.
Right? That's a lot of risk.
I don't know. Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, Ariana
The
Grande as
cast is
Glinda,
phenomenal, but what if? Look, forgive me
Ethan
if you're
Slater
a
as
lover.
Bach. Yes.
If you're a
Put them all
lover
in.
of The Wiz, the movie, then I apologize. But in my opinion, what a piece of shit. And I enjoyed the show, even if, the hurricane on stage was not my favorite, but, the tornado, excuse me, on stage, but it was creative. But there were so many things in the movie that were wrong, and they drove me crazy because I had a good time at the stage show. So maybe bringing back the stage show, they'll be able to resurrect it for me.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm saying it's my opinion.
I know. Well, I will say. I will say that I saw Wicked at the Academy of Music. I was in. I was in an.
I was talking about The Wiz. You know that, right? I said The Wiz.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
I know, but I'm.
Okay.
Oh yes, but I'm talking about. Okay,
you're switching back to Wicked.
Yes,
I was talking about
know,
The Wiz.
but we're in Oz. We're in Oz. I was just gonna say, there were moments because of where I was seated, where I was, I was disappointed in parts of the production because of what I was able to see from
of what of which show are we talking?
Of
which
Wicked.
Show? Of Wicked.
Of Wicked. Yeah.
It was the story that Wicked told that I enjoyed it, less so than what they did with it on stage.
But
again, me.
I will say,
show's running 20 years.
I know it must be doing something good. Yeah. So I do know that the TV production of The Wiz, the last one. I really enjoyed. I thought it was well done. What was the uh-oh? You don't agree?
You froze on my screen again.
Oh, that's gonna happen. Doesn't mean that the audio isn't there.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't hear a word you said.
Oh, great. Now I got to edit this out. So we'll be editing this too. It's going to be all editing.
All right. So 3, 2, 1.
So the TV production of The Wiz, I really enjoyed. It was a great production.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to say.
All right. That's all right. That's, listen, one of the great things about being older is how many shows have changed my life. It's not one or two, and of course in the days when you could see standing room for next to nothing, for under $10 or whatever. I don't even remember what it was. I saw the original Follies 3 times standing room. It is emblazoned in my memory.
Yeah.
What Michael Bennett did with the choreography, what the staging was, what the actors were able to do. It was just mind-blowing. And no one will be able to experience that original production no matter what anybody else does. I'm old enough to have done that. That, it means everything to me. And there are tons of shows along the way that have had similar effect, my perspective on life. Isn't that why we go to the theater? We learn about other people's lives that we wouldn't have even been able to see in the movies, perhaps.
Yeah.
And we get a live thing being thrown at us in our face. It's exciting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And those things that happen in the moment will never happen again. And if you were not in the theater, you missed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, people spend tons of money in Las Vegas, which they lose, and all they're doing is pulling a one-armed bandit, or now pushing a button.
Yeah.
So if it costs you that much to see Broadway, that's what it costs you.
So speaking of Vegas,
yes,
people are quite a tizzy over this Times Square casino.
Oh Lord,
This I don't know, Jay-Z. I don't know if this is a good idea.
Yeah, I understand it's a money-making idea for the people who have it, but for any of us who have walked into Times Square in the past 6 months, enough with the people.
Yeah.
There's no more room. We've already shut down 7th Avenue. It doesn't exist. It's a promenade now. And there still isn't room for all the people who are there. What are we going to do?
Well, in general, casinos, there's a reason casinos don't have windows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't want to let them out.
Yes, exactly. So just think about it. It will not just be slots and card tables. It's going to be everything that you would have at a casino. And so if they have a performance space in there at all, then they're really going to pull away from Broadway,
I think it's going to be a different crowd. Well, not a different crowd. I think it will. I don't think it will affect audience attendance at Broadway theaters. I think it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, but if somebody thinks...
My thing is, it's a crowd, and I understand they stay in the building, but they have to get there.
True.
And that's the problem, is that if you have ever been even walking, forget taxis, in trying to get to the theater, cannot happen. Take the subway, and even that's crowded. This is like going to the World Series on a single car subway.
Yeah.
That's what Times Square is like. It is crowded. And by the way, everyone be careful. The pickpockets are out in droves. It doesn't mean it's unsafe. The Times Square is really the safest place in New York you can be, except if you're letting your wallet hang out in your back pocket like an idiot. You just don't want to be stupid. You want to be aware, not be studying your phone while you have your wallet hanging out of your jacket. It's that kind of thing. You have to...
Don't look up at street signs. It's the number one tell.
Yeah, really. Or the top of buildings. Ooh, look up. Okay, that's the end of it. We know you're a tourist.
Yeah. And don't say any of those like typical tourist things either. I'm walking here. You know what? Rob him.
And then you have all those cartoon characters on the street trying to rob you too.
Oh my God, they look so ragged now. Well, we were in New York over the weekend, doing some double duty. We got to see A Man of No Importance at Classic Stage, and we also got to see Audra McDonald at Carnegie Hall. And we in between that. We had a meal, but we also went to Rockefeller Plaza to take a look at the center, to look at the tree, and it was jam packed. It was so packed, it was unbearable. But those raggedy characters were there as well. Like, just looking, nobody wants to see a ragged Elmo, just a worn down Elmo. Elmo's like, I've been through some shit, That's not the kind of Elmo you want to see.
But, again, just as a frame of reference, unfortunately, because I was there, we were there together with other people trying to make our way through. And by the way, New York has shut down Fifth Avenue every Sunday this month. For just because there are too many people, they can't allow cars and buses because there's not enough room on the sidewalks for all the people. So they give it one day a week where they shut down Fifth Avenue around Rockefeller Center.
Yeah.
And which is also the cathedral. St. Patrick's Cathedral is there, and Saks Fifth Avenue with a phenomenal light show.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is this is no more crowded than it was before the pandemic. It's always been like that. It's one of the reasons why, as a New Yorker, you stay away from those places. Maybe when you get to January, before they pull the tree down, you try to find an 11 a.m. morning where it's not so crowded, and you take a walk over there. But I don't know how they do it.
If you want to go ice skating, go to Central Park.
Yeah. Or Bryant Park. There's a new Bryant Park.
Well, it's a tourist trap too. I mean, not that Central Park isn't a tourist trap. I'm just saying, like, go further out because the tourists don't make it as far. You gotta find the spots where no one's here.
That's true.
Yeah.
But look, it's exciting how much theater is there. But the truth is, and this is a pattern that has stayed true for decades, so nothing's going to change this. The weeks between Thanksgiving weekend, tons of tourists, lots of theater. Most theaters that are doing well they sometimes add an extra performance that week, and they pay for it, the actors extra for it, because they can fill it. Except, of course, Thanksgiving Day. Christmas week, the same thing. The weeks in between, people go shopping. They take the walk to the Rockefeller Center tree. So theater, this is a great time to buy a ticket. Discounts are everywhere, and even the hits have openings. You can go in there. The only time better than the 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas is January. It's cold in New York. People are afraid it's going to snow, and no one has any money left from all their Christmas shopping. Yeah.
Save some of that.
That's another good time.
Not that it's some of it is theater-esque, but save some of that for a Nutcracker.
Okay.
There are so many Nutcracker performances.
There are too many Nutcracker performances.
Including one at that will be in Theater Exile. There is a one-man Nutcracker. There is a one-man Nutcracker here in Philadelphia.
There's a one-man Nutcracker. The Christmas Carol's the other one. Every year, the theater companies do it. Every single year. And the new thing, of course, is Patrick, what's his face from Star Trek? Picard.
Oh, Patrick Stewart.
Thank you. Patrick Stewart did a one-man show on Broadway, A Christmas Carol. They just did another version of it. It's just enough already. Not that it shouldn't be anywhere, but give us a break. I will say I once I saw the musical A Christmas Story based on the movie, and this was many years ago, and it was delightful. The music was good, the acting was phenomenal. I had a great time. I give those guys great credit. It's the same people who wrote the movie with the circus, Barnum. What's The Greatest Showman?
Greatest Showman.
They wrote the music to The Greatest Showman. The same writing team. Anyway, all of that notwithstanding, we will see a whole bunch of shows close right after New Year's. That is just standard. It happens. They know there's not enough audience in January. It's going to be just an empty month. There is one new show that I know of that is opening in January, but it's I think a two-man show with Nathan Lane. Good for him. He's coming back. Very exciting. But he's always welcome. He's been gone for a while. We do love the man. But again, this is I just heard about this, so we'll find out what happens. Yeah. But for the most part, January will be a lot of closings. That's just the way the cookie crumbles.
It's a good time to do some winter cleaning.
or staying inside.
Yeah. Stay indoors with hot toddy.
Not a bad idea. So, what else? Let's see what else is going on. Of note, the things that are opening and closing.
Well, since we're still in New York, and we were talking about the holidays, Hudson Yards. Hudson Yards and that lighting.
They announced. I mean, they have the vessel there, and of course, it's a big mall with a big office building above it. And the vessel is now a tourist attraction. They claim that, and I've been there. It looks like it's possible. They claim they've put up 2 million lights.
Over 2 million shimmering white lights illuminating the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I would think they might be able to reduce rent for all their stores, and therefore reduce inflationary prices if they just said.
Or maybe build phase 2 with all the all the cost attached to 2 million lights. I'm just saying.
That's what New York is. We go excessive, and then we drop out of other things.
What about that affordable housing unit area, Hudson Yards? What about that?
Yeah, really. Like
cap off that rail yard yet?
It's just amazing, and it's amazing the high-end stores they have there, and it's they try to be the new Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, it's nice to walk through, but I don't think I don't know that I've even purchased anything over there.
Well, they have a couple of reasonable stores, but it isn't my first place to go to buy things. But it's an interesting walk through their four stories of stores, and outdoors when it's a nice day temperature wise. It's really nice out there. Their plaza with the lights is really a nice place to spend some time and take some photos.
Yeah.
So I don't argue with that. But Bryant Park, we have all these gift villages that go up just for the holidays.
Yeah.
And they're booths. You walk around outside.
We have a Christmas village here in Philadelphia as well.
Well, you have, so no offense, you have one. We have dozens.
I know. I actually like the concept. It does feel a bit overcrowded, though. I noticed that there isn't one at Greeley Square anymore, or at least this year. That I mean, in New York, there was a a market there in years past, but it's not there anymore. But that was the one. It was just cozy. As soon as you get off the PATH train, you can walk up to that one. But we only have one. It's right in the center. It's at Love Plaza, across from Dilworth Park and City Hall, and it is hopping. It's hopping, except for on rainy days. Which it's interesting. Last night I saw. Now we're in Philadelphia. Last night I saw it was opening night for 1812 Productions production of This Is the Week That Is, which is a comedy variety show about the S show that is our nation. The various crazy, chaotic madness that goes on. And they were talking about how, the weather is everything we would want to do is somehow stymied by just the fact that it's 2022. It's like, oh, we're looking forward to snow, not global warming. Can't do that. Can't do that. It's like, well, what about gifts? Nope, the prices are too high. Oh, well, we're going to go travel and see family. Can't. Airlines are a mess. Gas prices are through the roof. There's just too many things now. So I guess, all those people who managed to make it to these spaces and kind of crowd, Rockefeller Center and places like that, good on you for for getting up there. You know?
Well, first of all, again, I don't know if you ever knew this, but maybe there used to be a television show before SNL, and before there was the Daily Show, and before there was on and on and on, a thing called That Was the Week That Was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where all of these improv shows, some of them are improv shows, they keep popping up with variations of the title.
Yeah.
And they're fun. That's, SNL, their news desk has always been the highlight of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For how many decades they've been on. I want to go back to the one thing that occurred to me, the one thing, whether it's our taxes or not, that New York and other cities, but more so in New York, if you don't have a penny to spend, if you're willing to walk around, you can entertain yourself easily for a week for nothing.
Yes.
You may have to eat. You may have to buy a $3 hot dog. But as far as entertainment, it's free. It's everywhere. Just keep walking. It's shocking how many displays and people performing on the street, and things that you can find. Again, it helps to have a friend in New York who can guide you. Like, oh, you didn't know if you walk a half a block this way and look to your right, you're going to see something spectacular, right? It's almost every block there's something, to be in awe of. So that's the cool thing about New York. Other cities have things to visit and stuff, but New York, you can just keep going.
Yeah. Well, again,
our advertisement for New York.
If you happen to make your way to Theater Exile, you were also on 13th Street, and 2 blocks down is the Miracle on 13th Street, which is a wonderful light show that is done up by the residents of 13th Street. It's beautiful, and it is pretty much a standstill if you're in a car trying to drive through it.
Yeah.
But it is good. It is a good happening.
I did that, through. When I lived in LA, there's an entire, it's not a closed community, but it was in an alcove. They had some natural barriers. You had one way in and one way out, and it's about a dozen streets, and every one of them went crazy. And literally it is, you drive through 2 inches per minute. And but you're doing that, so you have to say it's going to take me an hour or more to get through this.
Yeah,
but it's worth it. And that's in LA in great weather. I mean, they have nothing chilly there. No snow is going to fall. But people, these are great things. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway. But, I still like being indoors. The problem is, of course, we still have the issue of who's bringing in what disease to the theater. We just had, I don't even want to say, because I don't want to jinx any shows. I know of already 3 shows, Broadway and off-Broadway, that either had to put the understudy on this week or are taking a performance or 2 off because their leads caught COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still there. I mean, it doesn't mean we're as worried as we used to be, but we're in crowded little spaces.
Yeah, and it's always tricky too, because I'll go to one performance venue where masks are not required. Then I'll go to another one where masks are required. I'll go to one where masks and vaccination records are also required. And it's like there's no consensus,
No.
Like everyone's not on the same page about it. But when you hear that, like, oh yeah, so-and-so had I think I saw on Instagram, one of our theater companies here, someone on the production team had to go on as ensemble, like at the last minute, and it was like, wow, okay. Yeah, it's like we're jumping everybody in. I mean,
right.
The plus side is if you're in the rehearsal process, you can probably quote, the entire show anyways. You could go on. I always love when you get to opening, if you're a part of a production, like you pretty much know the show by heart now because you're just paying attention and you're not required to do anything. So if you're not required to do those parts, you can do those parts.
Well, and talking about understudies, one of the shames, in my less than humble opinion, is, and this just happened this past week at a particular show, they actually canceled a preview because, and it had nothing to do with COVID, but the leading actor got ill, whether it's the flu or cold, whatever happened to him. The understudy was not prepared. And what shocks me is I've never known an understudy not to prepare themselves from day one.
Yeah.
But in this case, the understudy had been just hired because they don't have to be hired early. And producers want to save money. So it just so happened that they lost whatever ticket sales they had that night. I'm sure they moved them to other performances because nobody said, a stage manager ought to just throw in an extra rehearsal for this understudy so at least he's somewhat prepared.
Yeah.
And it could have been that he was prepared, but they hadn't made his costume yet because there are rules. You can wear you can share an outer costume. You cannot share an inner costume. Anything that touches your skin, it's against the rules. You cannot share it. So if you are, if there's special undergarments to, because of wool on an outer garment, whatever, that has to be rebuilt for the understudy.
Yeah.
So that could have been a reason too. I mean, like I said, I'm conjecturing, but I've been in these situations.
And, when you get to regional, we're all still trying to bounce back from this long intermission. And if you want to adequately compensate the people who are participating in your production, you may not have the resources to have understudies.
Correct.
So you do have
and
to
that is a big
show.
difference.
Yeah.
That is a real big consideration. It's expensive. People, and it's not a joke, but I know people say, well, I can only afford to produce a 3-character play. Well, when you budget, you have to budget for 6 actors.
Yeah.
Because unless you have 3 actors who are the same age, the same type, the same build, you need 3 different types of people. And you are, certainly on Broadway, you're required to have them. That didn't always used to be the case. But eventually in the negotiations, it's like, how stupid do you want to be? You're going to lose $250,000 if you don't have a performance on Thursday night. It's worth just hiring an understudy in general.
Yeah.
It's insurance. So they eventually figured that out. But you can't afford that in all regional theaters or stock companies.
And this is why, if you live near a theater, go to their website and make a donation. They need you. They need you. Theaters like, I don't know, Theater Exile, for example.
Well, and I want to qualify
shamelessly plug Theater Exile, theaterexile.org. That's theater, exile.org. Make a donation.
You don't have to be worried about shamelessly promoting.
It's my show. I do what I want.
You've already done that. You're past shamelessly.
I don't know. I love my theater. I want everybody else to fall in love as well.
Right. And on the other hand, and you have a fan here. Luckily, I've been able to partake in your theater just this year. But I want to also warn people that you're allowed to expect something from your local theaters. That I know, of course, we're in the industry, but I get 20 to 25 requests for donations to theater companies each week.
Yeah.
And they're not equal. And that doesn't mean they have to be rich and they have to have a big hit. But what it does mean is you have to believe they care about their community, that they're nonprofit, they're not paying taxes. What do they do that makes them worth that benefit versus a commercial producer who goes out and says, I'm making profit for my investors. So I like to think and say, okay, during the pandemic, you overpaid your executives and you let all of your staff go, and now you are underpaying your local staff. And I understand you could use some more money, but I don't want to reward that.
Yeah.
So, and there are places that have done amazing things and have cared, and contacted me during the pandemic to say, hey, this is what we're trying to do, and we just hope you know we're still here, and we love you, and whatever you can do when we come back. Hey, these are people who made an effort.
Yeah.
So I like that. I would qualify it.
And many worked really hard to keep
right.
to keep artists employed as well.
Yes.
And that's something that, it's not like, hey, we just put a new wing on, and that's why we need your help. It's like, no, particularly 70% of the funding or the resources that we had, went towards keeping people employed,
Right.
And so these are the kind of things that when you think about, like, if you make a contribution to a cultural organization in general, let's just say cultural organization in general, where is it going? And if it's going to keep people thriving and to keep the community alive, just think about what your neighborhood would be like without the theater that's in your neighborhood. And is that something you want? I don't know.
And the other right, but the other qualification for that, again, there are two things to ask. One, there was a lot of money handed out from the federal government during the pandemic to certain theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them, what did you do with that money?
Yeah.
How was it used? Because I'm aware of, and I don't want to make this a blanket thing because it wasn't, there were just a few theaters that took that money and paid their executives. Mm-hmm. And that's all they did with it. There are other theaters that kept the health insurance going for their staff and some actors. They tried to develop work during that period of time, whether it was on Zoom or whatever, and they stayed in contact with their people. There's big difference. Big difference. Ask the question. The other thing is, though, is your local theater, are they about the same thing they were about 20 years ago and they're still begging for money? Or are they actually thinking about the future? Have they grown a little bit? Have they taken a few chances in a way that you think is good?
Yeah.
Because, again, it's wonderful to have a local community theater in your synagogue or church. Blessings to all of them. Phenomenal. But that's not what you donate to in a nonprofit professional theater. Yeah. You want to see that they're trying to move forward and help the culture.
Yes.
And take a few risks.
Basically, what we're saying is we're bound for the holidays, and we're about to end this year. Don't forget the arts organizations that keep our communities alive.
Yes.
So visit websites,
I said,
make donations.
Theater RE Exile. And just for everyone to know, public theater is ER.
Yeah.
And that's a debate. That's a debate. I will tell you that in general, because I with my book, let's plug, The Business of Broadway, on Allworth Press, there was a big debate with the publishers. Were they going to force me to, every time I wrote the word theater, use RE or ER? And luckily I could point to them and say, no, the names of certain theaters they use RE, but there are other theaters that use ER.
Yeah.
And then there are cases where you're talking about the theater in general, which is an ER, except if you're in London and you're talking about a London production, they use RE. So both are valid, but you want to be precise in why you're using it.
Yes.
So my book has them in both ways, back and forth, but every single usage is unique to its official usage.
Yes. And the sirens coming for Mitch tell us that we are at time.
There you go. It's New York City, people. We have sirens day and night.
It's crazy. He's not even on the ground floor where he is.
That's right.
It's so crazy. But that's the business of theater,
Yay.
a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And we'll see you at the theater.
Happy holidays.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.